Hello and welcome to a Bird's Eye View of Food, Part 3. Thanks for coming. I'm Tom Ruth of Sawmill River Audubon. Please answer the 3 questions in our pre-program survey while I give you a little background on us and our program. And when was the last time anybody told you to go ahead and multitask while he or she or they were speaking? We'll address questions after all the speakers have presented, so please put your questions in the chat as we go along and we'll address them at the end. This program is organized by Sawmill River Audubon, a friendly community who enjoy exploring the outdoors and connecting people and nature. That's the next slide. We offer many programs to this end, and you can see them listed a little bit on this slide. But please visit our website, sawmillriveraudubon.org, for details and registration information. Back to that one. Our advocacy committee was looking for a way to inform and energize and inspire all of us toward doing more about climate change and its impacts. We observed that activities related to food generate about 25% of all of the greenhouse gases released into the atmosphere. Now that's a huge subject area to tackle, so we decided to do a series of 3 webinars. We were calling them 3 bites out of food. The first one was on food production, focused on local sources. That aired last October and explored how local, sustainably grown animals and vegetables can actually improve habitat for us and birds and other wildlife rather than harming it. The second, in January, was about food consumption, our choices of what we eat and where it comes from and how that affects the environment. The links to the recordings of these programs are available on our website, sawmillriveraudubon.org. The third program tonight explores post-consumption issues. What can we do with our food waste that will be best for the environment? This is being recorded also. It'll be available on our website also, and a link will be sent to all the attendees tonight. And to you attendees, we very much appreciate all of you who are with us tonight. While our total is less than the 80 to 100 attendance of the other 2 webinars in this series, maybe it's too nice a day to delve into food waste. This event and the other 2 recordings comprise resource videos that will be promoted and used beyond tonight. So we'll be multiplying the value of tonight's program. And now into our program. First, we'll address the connection between food waste and the habitat for birds and other wildlife. Then we'll have an overview of priorities and actions ongoing in Westchester County from 2 of the county officials who know the most. Next, we'll explore the initiation and development of local community food waste recycling efforts with the 2 citizens who started the movement. And then finally, we'll dig deep with a resident expert into how we can recycle food waste in our homes. So to start it off, I'd like to introduce Ann Swain, SMRA Executive Director and lifelong birder and environmentalist, to talk about food waste and wildlife habitat. Ann.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And hello to everybody. You can see some poll results there. Obviously, we have a certain audience here. We're going to expand that when we share the video and ask people to also show where they are on this question of food waste. But I want to pull the camera back a little further back, as we did for part 1 and 2, and say, why is Audubon doing a program on food waste? It's kind of an interesting match. So a few years ago now, our attention was drawn quite sharply to the impact of climate change on birds. Some of you are familiar with this. Birds Tell Us is the hashtag, and birds are our connection to the program topic tonight. We know that things are changing because we're in touch with birds, how they move across the continent, their seasons, their numbers, when they arrive, when they leave, and it's changing radically year to year. We have the data in front of us. We're intimate with that data. And so that causes us to think about this impact, not just on birds, but other wildlife, on habitats, and on our own health itself. Turning to agriculture, to food systems, We already know from a lot of the work many of us done of the interconnections, of the ecological connections between birds and agricultural habitat and planet health. And there's been much work done about that across the planet. But what we've come to learn, and what prompted these bird's eye view of food talks, number 3 we're going to launch into just in a moment, is that the causes of global warming, most people think fossil fuel, but less conspicuous are the consequences of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And this is a quote from a book many of us have spent some time with called Drawdown by Paul Hawken, much recommended. The consequences of breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So if we look at our own fridges and think about the sources of those foods, fossil fuel powers tractors, chemicals, packaging, supermarkets, kitchen. The fertilizer to grow those food has an impact, and of course livestock is the big question, both as a source of emissions and the use of the land. And if you add livestock to all the other food-related emissions, what we eat turns out to be number 1 of the greatest causes of global warming, along with the energy supply sector. So that rocked our world, and that got us thinking about issues of food, consumption, production, and tonight, post-consumption.
Now here we have an ordinary loaf of homemade bread. Watch closely.
Mad, a whole loaf of bread disappearing before our very eyes.
Oh, madam, that is nothing. You far excel me at making bread disappear.
What are you talking about? I can't make anything disappear.
A third of all the world's food is currently being wasted.
Watch this. There, madam, is the amount of bread that you cause to disappear every week through household waste.
Over the last 40 years, food has got cheaper and people have become more affluent. It's a disposable commodity for a lot of people.
Once something special for Sunday dinner, chicken is now thrifty every day.
Big corporations have invested billions of dollars into working out how to trigger that evolutionary impulse to take and take more. More and more and more.
And these boxes join the never-ending parade of food. Food on the move.
Every week we buy 20-30% more food than we're even going to eat. We chuck the rest in the trash. Go to the grocery stores and they get stock at the end of the day that is nearing its expiry. A lot of grocery stores, maybe your local one, chucks it in the trash.
These products come from farms and ranches despite distance and season.
The fruit and vegetables that you buy in the store, it's not normal for them to look so perfect. And if an orange has even a slight skin blemish, a little scar that has no impact on the freshness, the taste, the longevity of that food, it gets rejected. What kind of sense does that make? Food is land. Food is forests. You have to chop down forests to grow more food. Food is water. Food is labor. Food is love. In our homes, we can stop food waste. But we can also demand that the businesses that bring us our food every day stop wasting their food and stop causing their farmers to waste food. And they will only do that if we demand it.
They will only do that if we demand it. Some of these ideas are the ones that have galvanized us and led to tonight's program, which, regardless of the number that were able to join us tonight live online, we're excited to be promoting and using the recording tonight in our teaching and our learning with others and our activism with others about food, birds, wildlife, and habitat. So it's my pleasure now to pass things along to Ken Novenstern, one of our board members, who's going to moderate and be in between the different short conversations we're having tonight with people who are already well immersed in this issue. So thank you. Ken?
Thank you very much, Ann. Really appreciate everything that you guided us with in terms of birds and food waste, etc. You're such an incredible resource. Thank you. I want to introduce Peter McCartt. Pete was part of our program back in December of 2019, in-person half-day program at the Westchester County Center. And when we go to Pete, he's always there, ready and willing to assist us. And we really appreciate that, Pete. Pete is the director of the County Executive's Office for Energy Conservation and Sustainability. He's been a leader for many years in several county environmental organizations, including Sustainable Westchester, Eastchester's Environmental Committee, Friends of Twin Lakes, Southern Westchester Energy and Action Consortium. Pete is an active member of a local Audubon chapter. And I want to introduce Pete, but I also want to say that this program tonight is really a demonstration of what Tip O'Neill used to say about all politics being local, and also John Cronin in The Riverkeeper, when discussing how each of us could do something to deal with what seems like an overwhelming set of issues. His point was, look in your own backyard and do what you can nearby. And so I believe that's what we're doing tonight. And thank you to everyone involved. Pete, I look forward to hearing what you have to say tonight. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you, Ken, and thank you, Ann, and Tom. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak here. I do speak on behalf of the county executive, who is not able to make it today, but you all should know that he is fully committed to this from day one of his administration. He tasked me, and the good people at DEF were already on it from day one. But I want to take a step back and talk about, before we get into what we are doing with the food scraps. I'd like to talk about how we shouldn't have food scraps. And I noticed that it was in the poll there, about not wasting our food, using everything that we can. I also think when you're making your purchasing, when you're going to the grocery store, think about budget your meals and only buy what you're going to need, and not more than that. And I look at this as a really a five-pronged approach to our food scrap issue, and perhaps that's number one. Number two is composting at home. That's what I do. I noticed that was, again, another issue on the poll there, and I recommend that highly. The one issue with composting at home, you can't add oils or bones or some other compostable items that we could do on an industrial scale. And to that end, we sell compost bins at cost. The county doesn't make any money off of them. We have another sale that's coming up July 9th, and I will add the link to register for that, to get a compost bin and a rain barrel if you'd like, and then some other accoutrements. They call it a digger tool to kind of break up the compost, and some other tools and things that we sell. That's another prong. The next prong is that we are very supportive of Feeding Westchester. We sponsor them in multiple ways, with financial resources just being one. And it certainly came into play in a really big way during the last, 15, 16 months. It really came into use. So Feeding Westchester and capturing food and before it becomes a waste is the next approach. That's the next prong. And the next prong after that, I'm not going to get into too far, because our next speaker and my good friend and cohort was going to speak about what we've done as a county. Two of the approaches there, and then the last one is really establishing the best, I think the best solution, which is an anaerobic digestion plant, a facility on a large scale. If you really want to look into it, there's a place that's called Quantum Bioenergy, and I'm not recommending them or anything, but they do have a very good website that gives you a really good indication of where we are headed. There is a couple facilities here already in Westchester. One of them is being developed in Mount Vernon. It's going to take some time for that one to really be up and running fully. And then there is a compost facility in Cortland Manor, as you know. And then again, I'm not going to get into it too further, because I want the next speaker, my good friend, and I'm going to introduce her. This is Melissa Rotini, and Melissa has she's been working with the county for a while, and she moved to DEF, and she's really knows the Department of Environmental Facilities that handles all of our recycling and our solid waste and our sewage treatment plants, and they do a lot of really good state-of-the-art work. And I'm sure that Melissa will talk about it. I'm very proud to introduce her. She really is very innovative, and she's got a lot of things to show us. And I can't thank her enough for everything that she and Louvatron and our DEF group does. So, Melissa, thank you very much, and thank you to the Audubon Society across the board. I am a member of the Bronx River Sound Shore Audubon, and thank you, Melissa. Take it away.
Oh, thank you, Pete, for that very lovely introduction. I am going to quickly put up my screen because I do not like staring at a picture of myself. So
Mine
I am
was
going
like
to
COVID hair. I had all that COVID hair.
So I am going to find, there we go. I'm going to share a PowerPoint here and get my face off of everything as quickly as possible. So let me just start the slideshow. Okay, so I hope everyone can see that. Thank you again, Pete, for the very, very lovely and touching introduction. I appreciate all those kind words. I put up a little, an extra graphic because Pete did mention that we do a lot in DEF, the Department of Environmental Facilities. I'm going to talk about what goes on in the Solid Waste Division. Specifically, we're going to talk quickly about the County Refuse Disposal District number 1, which DEF manages. So it consists of 36 of the county's 43 municipalities, which is about 91% of the county's population. And we handle the processing of all of the waste and recyclables. So all of the recyclables go to the MRF, the Material Recovery Facility in Yonkers, and we sell those into market. And all of the residential waste within the district goes up to the Resco facility, the Wheelabrator facility in Peekskill, where there's a clean burn process that creates energy. And it also recovers all of the metals that are in the trash. So all those little things that can't be recycled, they do get pulled out and used. And it also creates steam, which is used by a local laundry. So there are some great things there. Also, we have an organic yard waste disposal program amongst our many, many programs in the department, but I tried to hit on the ones that were relevant to what we're talking about tonight. So I think the organic yard waste is something that is in this vein. And also our food waste programs, which Pete started to mention. So why did we address food waste? One of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight was, as a lot of people know, the county did a study which concluded last year to look at food waste throughout the county. So food waste is the umbrella term that encompasses everything from commercial waste to your home waste. Why do we need to address it? Well, first of all, there's so much food insecurity. As Pete mentioned, Feeding Westchester is a great organization, and there are other food rescue organizations that, that's the first step. If you have something that you can donate, if it's donatable, that's a great place to go. But we also are looking at reducing the waste stream. That is always a goal of everyone. We want to try and minimize our waste in any way possible. Additionally, the state has passed the Food Donation and Food Scrap Recycling Act. That is effective as of next year. It doesn't require that municipalities do anything, but as we can tell from this administration, that doesn't mean we sit idly by and wait. So what happens is any business, school, any type of commercial entity that is generating 2 tons or more a week of food scraps are going to be required to make donations of those edible foods. They need to separate it out. They need to recycle anything that can't be eaten if there's a facility within 25 miles. So that is why it is important that there are facilities, as Pete mentioned. There is a small compost facility up in Cortland Manor right now, but that's a very small facility. So there will need to be eventually some sort of larger solution, a long-term solution. What did the food waste study find? Well, the food waste study found that within Westchester County, there are 85,000 plus tons a year of food waste disposed, which is, it sounds like a lot. It's 22% of residential solid waste. So 22% of everything you throw out, maybe not you personally, but of the majority of people is food waste. So obviously on the commercial side, you're dealing with larger numbers, but it's 21% because a lot of supermarkets and places where you think the food waste is being generated, they already have diversion programs in place because of the quantities that they're dealing with. So it's pretty close between commercial and residential, and it's a pretty good size number. So what is the county looking to do? Well, the county's food waste study came up with some long-term solutions. The first one that they suggested was wastewater plant co-digestion, which brings with it its own set of concerns. Obviously, you're adding something into an existing system, but there still are adjustments that need to be made when you're adding this food waste into wastewater. The other issue is that, and this is the big one to me, the state has mandated that any food waste that is processed through co-digestion needs to be used, the digestate, what's left over afterwards, needs to be used as a soil amendment. Now, why is that a concern? That sounds like a great thing. Put it on land. The problem is that, I don't know if everyone's heard of PFAS. If you haven't, I know way too much about it. I'd be glad to talk to you offline anytime. PFAS is a chemical that's found in everything. It used to be found in food packaging. It's what makes things waterproof, basically. And unfortunately, it's in so many products that it's in most of us. So if you're testing things in your body, there were studies done by the CDC and other agencies that looked into it, and it seems to be in a lot of people's bloodstreams. So we don't really know what is coming out of the wastewater plants. So that is something that we are always concerned about. But the county, as Pete mentioned, has been looking at anaerobic digestion as another possibility. So that is something that is likely going to be a public-private partnership. You would probably have one or more facilities throughout the county. And again, the capacity for an anaerobic digestion facility can be anywhere from 10,000 to 60,000 tons on up, depending on how it's sized. But those are obviously large, costly facilities. So again, you would be looking at, probably some sort of partnership. But Pete, as he mentioned, is on top of these things and doing a great job on behalf of everyone in the county. What has DEF done right away? Well, that study came out last year, and within the year, in less than a year, the county has cut the ribbon and opened our very own compost and education facility, Composted. So we did the ribbon cutting, as you can see there. I don't know if you can see Pete, he's back there, he's the tall one. We did the ribbon cutting on Earth Day. We thought that was very, very fitting. It's a small scale composting site. You can see the bays down in the picture in the bottom. And this site is going to give opportunities for educational programs. We're going to provide education for everyone from students up to, municipal officials. If they are thinking of opening a small scale composting facility, one of the things that Anne mentioned was the transportation costs for the food that you buy, but also the disposal of the food waste and the food scraps that you may be dealing with. That's another thing that also has to travel, just like our regular waste. So to the extent that can be minimized through small scale composting sites, we would encourage that. We're also going to be teaching about the environmental benefits of composting, about the local food scrap composting programs, and about home composting. So we really think this is a great opportunity for anyone in the county to really take advantage and inform themselves. And we're super, super excited about it. And the other program that the county has implemented within the past year is our residential food scrap transportation and disposal program, RUFSTAD. It's a terrible acronym. I say it every time. I couldn't come up with a better one. No one else had one, so it is what it is. But it's a great program. This program, for anyone within the county's district, which again, as we mentioned at the beginning, it's about 90% of the population falls within the district. Those municipalities can participate in this program, and it makes food waste essentially the same cost or less as throwing it out as garbage. You didn't hear me wrong. The county has subsidized this program so that municipalities within the district can, for almost nothing, decide, okay, we're going to do a compost program, and we're going to take this and we're going to have this material recycled, and it's not going to cost us any extra. And how we did that is we negotiated a contract, and as I said, we are doing some subsidizing of the program, but any municipality can start a drop-off site. There's a photo of one here. I think that's Meurer, I believe. You can have a drop-off site, and it will be picked up. Now, the cost of those signs and the containers there, those as of right now are 50% reimbursable by New York State DEC. So it really is a very low cost program with a little bit of education. And through this program, we have had the ability to bring Pelham Village and the city of White Plains into food scrapping, which we think is great. We're very excited about it. All of the municipalities that are italicized are currently part of the program. Some of the others are working on it, and we have others that are coming on board. Anybody who's out of district, it may not work for them, but again, it allows these municipalities who maybe couldn't afford to do it before or didn't even think to do it to come on, do the recycling, and have that taken care of. It's a completely voluntary program, but if you're interested, I know who can help you. And I'm pretty sure that Ken is going to tell you all about these two fine folks as we come up in our next segment. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. As always, if you have any recycling questions for Westchester, you can contact our recycling helpline, and they have staff there to help you. Thank you very much for having me.
Melissa, just a quick question. Your very first slide showed the western half of the county and that it was part of the district that the county oversees. What about the middle eastern half of the county and the individual towns that deal with their own waste?
So the program is available to everyone. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm trying to share that map again. Oh, there we go. The program is available to anyone. The subsidized portion of it, however, is within the district. You would need to be subsidized. So the way that the district works under state law is that, you know, the municipalities in the blue all pay to participate in the district. So that's how we are able to subsidize some of these things, along with obviously the county. So by law, any of the municipalities who are in the white on that map, so it's Somers, North Salem, Lewisboro, Pound Ridge, Bedford, Newcastle, and North Castle. All of those municipalities, they don't belong to the district, so they would need to pay what's known as full reimbursement costs. We don't charge them anything extra, but they have to pay us what we pay. So,
and could you just break that down a little bit? Because I know you know what you're talking about, but people who are watching this may not appreciate that. For instance, I was on the town board in Newcastle, and we had our own solid waste advisory board, and they would advise on garbage contract periodically. So what's different between something like that and the in-district communities?
So the difference would be that the in-district communities would be so they're participating in the district. They joined the district when it was formed back in the early 80s, and they bought into it basically. And there is a tax associated with the district, just like any other district that you might have a small district tax on your bill. And so we handle, as I mentioned, we handle all of the garbage and all of the recycling. So while you may be paying a private carter and they negotiate the deal with wherever they take your trash, we handle all of that for the district municipality. So we have our, you know, we have a transfer station in Mount Vernon, we have a transfer station in White Plains, we have a transfer station in Yonkers. We take all of the solid waste in, we process it for, you know, we go through it, we compact it, we travel it up to Resco, and anyone that's in the district pays a discounted fee off of what a private company might pay if they were to go to another location. Same thing with the recyclables. So we process everything at the material recovery facility. We take them in, we go through, we remove the contamination, we separate them out into saleable products, you know, bundled perhaps by, you know, all of the paper is put together by grade, and we sell that on the open market to make a profit that goes back into the district to fund programs such as this.
Great. Thank you very much, Melissa. You can count on the fact that we're going to be asking you to be on another program sometime soon, and we really appreciate your participation, and Pete as well, as always.
Glad to help. Thank you.
Now I'm going to introduce Michelle Sterling and Ron Schulhof. They are really the people with feet on the ground who are coming up with programs that are innovative and addressing things that I think the rest of us just assumed were a given, whether it's throwing away your food waste or having to listen to the constant drumbeat of leaf blowers around your neighborhood. Michelle and Ron have been very active in launching sustainability initiatives throughout Scarsdale and Westchester County. They have helped 7 Scarsdale schools, houses of worship in Scarsdale Village launch food scrap recycling and zero waste programs. Their efforts have made a tremendous impact within the Scarsdale community, as well as throughout Westchester. And I'm not going to get into too much more because I anticipate they're going to be talking about some of these programs, but it's just fascinating reading about some of their accomplishments. So Michelle and Ron, if you could take us on to the next stage of the program.
Thanks, Ken. So hi, everyone. I'm Ron, and Michelle's here as well. And we're going to talk to you about the municipal food scrap recycling programs that are in over half of Westchester County municipalities right now. And when we started this, it's probably about 4.5, 5 years ago now in Scarsdale, we wanted to create a program that wasn't just for our community, but that could really be a model for others to take and make it easy for them to start recycling food scraps on the residential side. So Michelle and I are going to go through a brief overview of how this program works, so you can get a sense. Now, hopefully you're all in municipalities already that do this and you all do this at home. If you're not, please feel free to reach out to us afterwards. This is just sort of an overview. Really, we will help any municipality with every aspect of it, from the setup to the materials, and we will share everything that you will see in this presentation. We're going to go over 3 aspects of this program. The first is, how does this look from the residential side? So what does this look like if you're a resident in a municipality with a food scrap recycling program? What are you doing at home, and how does that look? The second part, and we'll do this part briefly, because the main audience for the second part would be, what do the operations look like? How will this actually work for your town or your village or your city? Who will run it? How will it be set up? And then the third part is, how do you get everybody to do it? How do you do that education and awareness to get not just the people that are on this call that want to do this, but somebody that maybe has never heard of compost before or never even thought about their food scraps before, to get them to say, I want to start separating food scraps, I want to get them recycled, and then ultimately stop wasting food and using compost everywhere. So I'm going to hand it over to Michelle to start with, how does this program work for the residential side, for the resident?
Hello, so I'm Michelle, and also I just want to mention, just in case Ron didn't, we're volunteers. We chair our town environmental committee, but as Ron said, this program, all of our programs, we share them with all the other municipalities.
Oh, Michelle, I can't hear you.
Yeah, your sound just dropped out briefly. Try again.
No. All right, I'm going to talk because we've done this presentation many times, so I'll just start talking while Michelle works on that. So,
okay.
Oh, I think she's back.
You're back. Oh. So what does this program look like if you're a resident? If you find out your town has a food scrap recycling program, what are you doing as a participant at home? Well, we wanted to make this program really easy for everybody to do. So the first step is making it easy for people at home. So we worked with our municipality to put together what we call a food scrap recycling starter kit. And that's what you see in this picture in the kitchen here. On the left, you see a small countertop pail. That's going to go in your kitchen, or it's going to go under a sink or on a counter. And you're going to line it with a compostable bag. That's the little roll of bags you see that it looks like green plastic. They're actually made of cornstarch, and they're fully compostable and will turn right into soil along with the food scraps. So you line your small countertop pail, and then you put your food in there. And this is one of the beauties of this program. So you heard Pete McCartt earlier talk about backyard composting, which, by the way, Michelle and I love. We both do it. We fully support it and promote it. But as Pete mentioned, you can only put certain things in there. You can't put in all food. In backyard composting, you're doing fruits and vegetables, coffee grounds, and eggshells. In this program, because it's going to a commercial facility, it's literally all food. You don't have to think about it. So it's all those fruit and vegetables, but it's also meat, the bones, fish, dairy, bread, rice, pasta, cooked food, oily food, food that's spoiled way past the expiration date that we're still not willing, that we wouldn't be willing to eat, food that your kids maybe dropped on the floor. You can also put in compostable items, such as a coffee filter or a tea bag, as long as it's not one of those new plastic tea bags. And you can put in 3 types of paper products that actually can't go into paper recycling. So that's soft paper, that's paper towels, napkins, and tissues. Those can go into this program. So you can imagine you're at home, you're with your family, you're with friends. and you can just take whatever's on your plate, put it right into that small pail. It goes right into a compostable bag, and then it's sealed shut. And the beauty of this pail, and Michelle and I, we spent a long time testing every pail that was on the market, is that there's no smell, there's no bugs that come out of it. It's really neat because you're using a compostable bag. It's really easy because all food can go in there. You don't even have to think about it. Now, of course, you're going to fill up this pail, and depending how big your family is, it could fill up every day, could fill up every couple days, but you need somewhere to put those bags in. So that's what you see in this larger green bin. So this is what we call the storage and transportation bin. It holds about 4 to 5 full bags from the small countertop pail. So throughout the week, you're filling up the little pail in your kitchen. As that fills up, you just tie them off. You put them right into that bigger bin. That bigger bin, it locks. So you keep it in your garage, but when you go to put it in your car to bring it to a drop-off site, it's locked so the lid doesn't move. And it holds about a week's worth of food. We do suggest not keeping it more than a week. It is food. Obviously in winter, it's not a big deal, but you want to dispose of it about every week. And of course, we'll talk about this more in education awareness. We go through this program with everybody so they understand what can go in, but included in the starter kit is a guide, which we have in 4 languages. So volunteers helped us translate it. Both of these bins have a sticker right on them. So right there, you have all the information on what can go in, what you want to look out for, what can't go in, and where to go for any questions. So
Ron, could we do a quick check-in with Michelle to see if her sound is good?
Can you hear me now? Sorry, just having.
yes.
Okay, great.
So perfect. I'm going to now pass it to Michelle to talk about the next step of this.
Okay, and if I cut out, just take over for me. Okay, great. So from the resident, it's super easy. This is a photo of somebody in their kitchen. You can see you just collect the food scraps in a compostable bag. It's easy, it's neat, it's clean. And I think the next piece after that is, what does the resident do? You drive up to your drop-off site. We use about 3 parking spaces here in Scarsdale, but there are places that use 1 parking space. There are towns that don't have a recycling center, so they put it in a park or in a parking lot somewhere else. So you don't need a recycling center. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need to create anything to create a drop-off spot. You just need a little spot to put the bins. And that's where this is really where the resident's piece ends. They just bring their bin there, dump it off, and that's the end of the resident piece. In terms of the piece for the municipality, because a lot of times it's the volunteers that have to, speak with the municipality, and the municipality will say, well, what do I need to do? There's really not too much to do. You have the bins there, and everything just sort of gets put there. And then the bins, they get rotated, they get filled, they get emptied by a carting company, not by the municipality. We do put special bins there, as you can see. We put bright green bins because we want it to stand out. They are special organics bins. That's really important. They have extra thick walls to prevent for bulging. They are completely sealed, so they'll never leak. And they have a latching lid, so nothing gets in or out. We've had our site up since 2017, and we haven't had any issues. It's probably the neatest, cleanest place at our recycling center. So it's really, operationally, it's really a very simple operation. Once the bins are there, there's really not much for the municipality to do, since the municipality isn't transporting any of the food scraps.
When we were thinking about this program and working with our municipality to create it, this was such an important part, was to just make it easy for every person that was either participating in it or helping to operate it. And so we wanted to make it easy for the residents, but we also needed to make it operationally feasible and easy for the municipality. And it really is. The next piece.
One thing I just want to add to that, a lot of the staff now, the municipal staff says They actually love the fact that the food scraps are segregated. So for the portion of town that's doing the food scrapping, their trash is actually drier. The trash is significantly less, and it's a lot drier and cleaner. So the residents love it because they don't have any animal issues anymore with their trash, and the staff likes it because really all the wet, all the food scraps and the wet stuff gets segregated into these special bins and collected. So it's kind of a win both for the residents, and we get great feedback from the municipal staff as well.
Michelle and Ron, just a quick question. How did you sort of get the critical mass to convince the town to do this? Because there are other municipalities who are not yet there.
Well, we did start with our schools. So we had, our story was we started with our schools. All of a sudden, all of the kids were, recycling all of their food scraps in the lunchrooms. And then they were saying to their parents, well, why is this just a school thing? Why aren't we doing this at home? Telling their parents, you're not supposed to be throwing away food. Food can be recycled. So we definitely got a lot of enthusiasm there. And that helped us a lot. Because when we started, we had a huge base already that wanted to start. That being said, there are certainly towns that aren't doing this in their schools, that have done a municipal program first, and that has actually spurred on doing it in their schools. So you can really do it either way. Now that we have, especially now that we have over half of Westchester County, half the towns in the county doing this, it's really easy for a town to start. Because I think whereas before, when we were the very first town, there were some people said, oh, nobody's going to do that. And we had to convince people, yes, people are going to do it. But now over half the county's doing it. And there's a lot of, interest in all the different towns. It's growing all the time. So there's no convincing needed anymore. So whether you start in your schools or you start in your town, they really work symbiotically.
And there's been also another major change, which is on the financial side. So we're not going to go too deep into the financials tonight, but really there's three main components of the finances. There's the startup costs. That's to buy these bins and to buy this sign. That's about $2,500. And as Melissa mentioned, the bins are 50% reimbursable from New York State now. So it's a very manageable upfront cost. It's not a $20,000 or $50,000 capital cost upfront. The other major cost used to be the hauling. You had to pay a private carter to come and pick up. And that was an impediment for some municipalities to fund that. Well, that cost has now gone away. It hasn't gone away, it's shifted like all solid waste, where the county is taking on a lot of that financial burden, as they do with trash, as they do with recycling. And so that financial piece for the individual municipality has gone away for them now. This is a huge change between having over half of Westchester doing it. So now there's not a concern of, oh, am I going to be second? Is this going to work? Are people going to do it? We know people will do it. We know it's successful. And then the financial piece is much more manageable now.
And Ron, a quick question. Maybe this is more of a Northern Westchester question. Those containers look pretty solid, but we hear stories about bears and pretty strong. What is there a solution to that, or is that something that's been discussed?
So that's a great question, and that is specifically why you see these toters and not a dumpster. And so how does this program work, and how does it keep smells out, and how is it neat and clean? So right now you see a bunch of toters here, and you see one up front. If you came to the drop-off site, what you would see is a bunch of toters on the left side. You'd see maybe 3 to 4 up front, and that's what residents are putting food into. So they're putting them in just into the ones up front. As those get filled up, they get put to the side and locked. Now, because these are special organics bins and they are fully sealed, so most of these bins you see for trash aren't fully sealed. They look sealed, but there's little gaps at this bar in the front. There's sometimes gaps at the wheel. The lid's not heavy duty. And so the smell gets out. And that, of course, attracts animals. These bins There's no smell that comes out. We love to host people in the middle of summer on the hottest days because you stand there and you have no idea what's in these bins. And because they get filled up one at a time and wheeled to the side, they're never opened again until they get picked up. Where you see the issues is when a community tries to say, well, why don't I just use a dumpster? That's just one big thing. I don't have to worry about toters. But of course, a dumpster never gets cleaned. And a dumpster has the food in there from 6 days ago when you're lifting up that lid. One other piece that you don't see in this picture that we do to help keep these bins even cleaner is the municipality also lines these bins with very large compostable bags to keep everything neat. So we have not had any issue here, and our friends in the northern communities that have also been doing this for years have had no issues with animals.
In fact, one of the first places that did food scrap recycling in the schools, not the town, was Katona, the Katona Bedford School District. And they're pretty rural, and they have a lot of bins from their schools. And it was the same thing. If you follow this model, stay away from the dumpster, you're going to have success.
So can the two of you pull together your thoughts, and then we'll move on to the next speaker?
So just the last piece, I'll hand this part to Michelle, is how do you get everybody in your community to then do this program?
Yeah, so just, really quickly, there isn't one silver bullet, but over time, you'll get more and more people to join the program with a combination of, traditional media outreach, letters in the paper, banners, articles, and then also meeting with all of your local groups, hosting zero waste events. Ron and I did a lot of events at various houses of worship, with League of Women Voters, with Girl Scouts, with Boy Scouts. And then as it goes along, as more people do it and people realize, oh my God, I really don't have very much trash anymore. This is great. They tell more friends, and it's sort of spider webs out. So it's a program that, there's no one single thing you do to get everybody to sign up. But if you set it up successfully so that it's easy and it's neat, and it's inexpensive, so you do it at cost to the residents, and you just do consistent outreach, it will be a successful program, and it will grow every week, like our program is still growing every week 4 years later.
And this is where everybody on this call comes in. I mean, all of us here, we know about compost. We know the benefit of this. And this is where we fan out and get all those folks who have never heard of this before. And you can see us doing it at events like Compost Give Back Day, where we bring some of the compost back. We set up a big tent. We have volunteers out there. And really at the end of the day, for Michelle and I and everybody that does this, it's more than just getting your food scraps out of there, out of the trash. It's really about changing the mindset of what people are doing. It's about people recognizing that food is only trash once we throw it in the food. It's a resource. There's nutrients, there's energy in it. We want to not waste it, but if we have to throw it out or it's a part of the food that we don't eat, we want to recapture that. And one of the beauties of this program is it's so hands-on. We've also done LED streetlight programs and other sustainability initiatives, but people don't participate in them. In this program, people are actively participating, and what we found is so many people come back and say, what else can I do? Or they start thinking about their landscaping and pesticides when they think about, boy, what goes into the compost? And this is all natural, and what am I putting on my backyard? And so it's a great way to engage with folks in your community about all sorts of other sustainability initiatives as well. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so for the next person can share it.
All right, Ron and Michelle, thank you so much. When we were planning a program about 9 months ago was the first time I heard about the two of you. And we were going to try and get you involved back then, but it's wonderful that we were able to bring you on tonight. And clearly you're both very proud and should be of the success that you've had. So thank you for these wonderful ideas. You didn't even get on to some of the other amazing ideas that you have that you've implemented. So again, time for another program. Now we're going to go to Kathleen. Thank you. We're going to go to Kathleen Williamson. And Kathleen?
Hi, yes, I'm happy to be here too. I'm also on the board of Sawmill River Audubon, and it gives me such pleasure to introduce our next and final speaker. Whenever I was unclear what to put in my recycling bin or what I could or couldn't put in Pleasantville's municipal compost, I'd find myself pondering, what would Helen do? So I text or call Helen Meurer, and no matter how obscure the question, Helen always knew the answer. Helen is a master composter and recycler and has taught composting in schools and in the community. She is chairperson of the Village of Pleasantville's Conservation Advisory Council, advocating for open space and habitat protection. She is on the Pleasantville Community Garden Board, an organization that grows, gathers, and gives fresh produce to people who lack access or funds. She is a member of Pleasantville Recycles and the Climate Smart Community Task Force and works to increase awareness on environmental and other issues through Films on Purpose. Thank you, Helen, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Kathleen. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to take it down a notch and thank you for the introduction, Kathleen. It's great to work with you on Films on Purpose. Peter McCartt said at the beginning, I'm right with him on the very first thing when you're planning to go shopping is to buy only what you plan to eat. And so I'm going to start with that, but I have a small slideshow, which is a shrunken version of one that I did on composting through the library a couple of weeks ago. I hope I've kind of captured just what we need to hear today. So let me pull that up. Here we go. And slideshow. So can everybody see that? Here we go. So what can you do at home? So this is kind of very hyper-local, and here we go. So one of the things we don't do, many of us, or I didn't used to do, is when you buy a vegetable is you don't use the whole thing. And, you know, more recently I've come to enjoy things like the tops of turnips and beets, or beetroots as I would call them. And I think we're so quick to just eat what we're familiar with and dismiss things that are a little peculiar. So just remember, greens are good for you. So if you get given a bunch of root vegetables and they have greens on, more often than not, they're edible. If you have leftovers, eat them the next day, have them for lunch, or freeze them. And then, as Peter said also, and I think Melissa Rotini also said, is there are lots of ways to donate unused food. And it can be a little bit tricky to find those. They mentioned Feeding Westchester. And then here in Pleasantville, we are part of a larger organization called Grow a Row, which I'll talk about a little bit at the end. Something else I do with my vegetable peels is I make stock, and then I compost the vegetable peels after that. And I think that you probably mentioned this in a previous talk about just maybe shifting your diet a little bit and eating more plants and less meat and dairy, and then you actually have less waste. So moving right along, and it reduces our carbon footprint. So here we go. So do you need a big yard to do composting? Well, no, not really. You can see there's a picture of a very beautiful little area with an earth machine compost bin. And this is the compost bin that the county sells through the Greenberg Nature Center. And I keep mine next to the house. I used to keep it a long way from the house. And then I found in the winter, I was stomping across quite a bit of snow to get to it. So I now keep it closer and it's a lot more convenient. And having a little bit of sunshine on it helps, but it's not required. But, you know, compost likes to be warm, and a big black bin like this one with a bit of sun on it heats up faster. I imagine most of you know what compost is. You know, in the natural world, it just happens. A tree is a perfect example. All the leaves fall off in the fall, and then they decompose through into the spring, and they are absorbed into the soil both by rotting and also by worms and other creatures that chew on them. And then eventually the tree takes back up nutrients that its own leaves produced. So it's a nice cycle. So the 4 things that go into compost are nitrogen, nitrogen products, which you find in green things or food waste, carbon, which you'll find in old dry things like leaves or sawdust or shredded newspaper, and then oxygen for all the fuel, and water. As was referred to earlier, I'm just going to have to see if I can move my thing a little bit. There we go. Pretty much anything go in a home compost bin that is plant-based. So as Ron mentioned, in a home compost bin, you wouldn't put meat and dairy in, but you can put in all of these things: coffee grounds, tea bags. I put in coffee filters. I put in eggshells. I even put dryer lint in. Although my friend Lisa tells me I should actually use that to start fires with. Whenever you add food scraps to a compost bin, you need to put in a large amount of leaves to bring that carbon balance up, which we'll see in a minute. So what do we have here? That is what can go in. For a while we had a guinea pig, and most of the sweepings from that went in. So it's a little bit like the miniature version of horse manure. You wouldn't put in meats, bones, and so on. Anything really oily, like a lot of peanut butter, a little bit's not a big deal. Coal ash, so if you happen to burn coal, which most of us don't, you shouldn't put it in because it probably has some heavy metals or minerals in it you might not want in there. But you can put wood ash in. So if you have a fireplace, you can put your ash from wood burning in there. You don't put waste in there like cat and dog waste or cat litter or diseased plants, because compost bins just don't get hot enough at home to kill pathogens from things like diseased plants and dairy. So there are some numbers about the ratios of carbon to nitrogen, but they're really not very meaningful when you're a home composter because you're not weighing anything. It's more about kind of just getting it right. So if you put in a gallon of food scraps, you should probably put in 2 or 3 gallons of leaves. So you sort of get used to it as you go along. It's usually naturally quite wet because the food scraps are wet. And a compost pile should be, they say about 3 feet cubed, but obviously that earth machine that I showed you earlier is really not that big, but it does the job just fine. That's a picture of a bunch of things that live in compost piles. It's a little food web unto itself. And these are some types of composters that you can have at home. The earth machine on the left. We have, this one is a 3-bin turning composter, which I think is a very funny name for something because it doesn't turn anything. You have to turn it. So you would put food scraps in like the bin on the left, and then after a month or so, shovel those into bin number 2 and start adding food scraps to bin number 1 again. And then after a month or so, bin number 2 moves to the right and bin number 1 moves to the right. And it's a process that happens to help aerate the product and make the compost process move faster. You can build one of these pretty easily. I'm happy to send you design plans, which I think might have been provided by Cornell Extension. And then one thing, if you used pallets, a lot of people use pallets to build things. Just make sure your pallets have this little thing on that says HT, which stands for heat treated, rather than chemically treated wood. This is a very simple leaf bin. You can just use a bit of chicken wire and make a circle, and then you don't even need any supports for that. And it's good to keep your leaves in the autumn to be used throughout the year to add to your food scraps. And then the last one, they're very popular, they're tumbling bins, but I think they're a little bit small. But you know, some people like to keep things a bit neater and tidier than others. But they have different kinds, some very large bins, and some that are insulated, like a fancy Jura composter bin. But just getting your food scraps out of the waste stream is a great thing. How do you do it? Well, you probably all have composted at some point, but basically, just like with the food scrap recycling program, it's easiest if you collect things on your kitchen counter. And then when your kitchen counter bin is full, you move that outside to your compost bin. And when you do that, you add a bunch of browns, such as leaves. And when you feel like it, you could turn that and add a bit of air by turning it, which will help the decomposition move along. One thing I should mention, I know Ron and Michelle are on this too, is you should take stickers off. Like I have these little stickers here. What is interesting about these stickers is they are apparently edible, but they don't compost, which I think is fascinating. And when your bin is pretty full, you just stop adding things and maybe start another pile, or lift up that great big earth machine, move it to the side and just leave the pile alone, maybe cover it with leaves, and it'll do its own thing. And in about 6 months, you'll have useful compost for your garden. It takes a lot longer than most people think. You don't just put it in like a factory, and even though it's called an earth machine, there's no moving parts. But you'll know when it's done because it won't smell so bad. It'll look like soil. Mine still has lots of avocado pits and eggshells in it, but I don't really care too much about that. I still throw it in my garden. You can mix it in with other soil, and it really adds a lot of moisture to your soil and helps with the nutrients. So it's great around flower beds. I use it in my vegetable garden. If you live in an apartment, you could do worm composting. It's actually fun to do with kids, and it's pretty easy and straightforward. One thing to be aware of, although worms eat half their weight every day, it still takes a lot of worms to eat food scraps that most of us produce. I mean, I produce probably, I don't know, a couple of quarts every couple of days, and you need a lot of worms to eat that. But once your worms start multiplying, you can actually compost a fair amount through worms, and they make, you can collect worm pee, and that's actually worm tea, as they call it, and use that to water plants or throw it on other things in your garden. So, as we said at the beginning, just buy what you need. Nothing new here. And I really encourage people to look at Meatless Mondays. You can get an email from them every Monday that gives you some suggestions of plant foods to eat. You maybe used that before in previous talks. And I have some resources here, which I think Ken or Tom are going to send out. The Westchester County brochure on backyard composting is amazing. It's one of the most simple things to read. One thing I love about composting at home is there's very small carbon footprint. You are not driving your waste anywhere. You are not making your bins smelly, and you actually get to use that food waste when it's composted. Plus, you're keeping a lot of your leaves on your property instead of dragging them to the curb or whatever you do, and using those in your compost. A program I mentioned earlier, Grow a Row, is about donating fresh produce to be used for people who don't have access to fresh produce. So if you grow extra vegetables, or if you're in a farm share like I am and you have more than you can eat, you can find places to drop that off, and it gets donated to food pantries. And we do it here in Pleasantville through the Pleasantville Community Garden. We have a drop off on somebody's porch. That's about it. Feel free to email me.
Helen, just a quick question. What's the one thing that surprised you the most when you started composting?
Oh, how easy it is. It's just, and you know, when we have friends, I think Ron and Michelle probably know, there's a Fiona Mitchell, who lives in Bedford, and she's, like she and I were very casual about this. It's not like a headache, you just do it. And I only started turning my composter a couple of years ago. I used to just leave it alone. So it just takes a lot longer to do that. But if you turn it either with a garden fork or a turning tool, it just composts faster. But it is so easy, and it reduces the amount of waste you put out in your street trash. So, and food scraps, although have carbon in them, they're not the best things to be sending to an incinerator. So we also do have the food scrap recycling program in Pleasantville. So in the winter, I did drag some of my Meteor products down there or whatever. So it's all good.
All right, great. And there's a quick question. What about the dryer lint? Is that, does it contain chemicals? Is that a bad thing, or?
Well, I think, if you're drying cottons, like towels, actually I hang most of my laundry out, but I do have to throw it in the dryer because everybody complains they're like stiff British towels. If it's cotton dryer lint, I think you can just put it out there. It's just a natural product. But if it's a whole bunch of polyester, then I wouldn't put it out in my compost.
Yes, I see one question. Freezing leftovers. Do most meals work out okay with that?
I mean, I think, there are some things that don't freeze well, but one of the things to do is if you do buy more food than you're going to eat, and I am a victim of this, occasionally I get very excited at the farmer's market and buy more than I can possibly consume, and then I'm also in a farm share, is to cook vegetables before you freeze them. They don't freeze well when they're raw, but most fish freeze as well, scallops or any fish that you buy. And meats freeze well. And, if you label them with the date, and when you pull it out, if it's not too frosty, or even if it is, you can still eat it. But vegetables generally have to be cooked. But if you had like lots of basil, you can actually, blend it up with a bunch of oil and put it in an ice cube tray and have basically ready-made basil to use in your cooking throughout the winter. So it's a great way to prepare for those not so sunny months.
Thank you, Helen. And this is a question maybe more directed to Ron and Michelle. In terms of, Jenny Stern asked the question about, well, and maybe even going back to Melissa. Jenny, do you maybe want to weigh in? Can Jenny speak and ask her question? It's with regard to people who live in apartments. And this was one of our concerns when we were talking about this program.
Yeah, I live in Yonkers, and we have many apartment buildings where I live, and I'm just wondering, there's anyone come up with any way for people who live in apartments to get their stuff collected?
So we've set up this program with multiple apartment buildings as well. It can be a little unique to each apartment building, but we are, just like we're happy to share everything we've done on the municipal side. If an apartment building is interested, we're happy to have them come visit one of the apartment buildings, show how we did the setup, show all of that. So we put our contact info in the chat. Please feel free to reach out to Michelle and I. We're happy to chat more about apartments.
I think this has been a tremendous program. Thanks to everyone who was a speaker.
And yeah, we can just thank everybody for their coming in and for what they're doing already, and also for what they will be doing more of in the future. And thanks especially to our panel for all of their hard work, and as well as communicating it so well for us to take it from here as well. So once again, thanks everybody, and have the rest of a very nice evening.
Thank you, Tom. Good night, everyone.